My voice feels it. So while I sound like I smoke a pack of parliaments a day, I do not. I just went from working remotely at home to talking to every single one of you all day long. I don't regret it. I love it. I'm very excited. So I do apologize for my voice right off the bat. My name is Leah Good, and I am the operations director here at Wonderland and Microdose. Yes, we're very excited. And when I was given the opportunity to pick a panel to moderate, I went ballistic to moderate this one. Last year, we had this panel as well, and I think a couple of you were on it, and I remember you guys leaving, and I was like, we need to scrape off Mount Rushmore and get these people's faces on there, because they're doing some really, really important work, and I'm really excited to be here and talking to them about what they're doing. This conversation is incredibly important, I believe. We're all sexual beings. We all have a different interaction with it. We all have our own experience of it, our own trauma, etc. And all these beautiful humans are doing their own work to help us break through, to experience to the fullest that element of our person. So what I would like to do today, I have some questions. We're going to get through it. We have a whole hour, which feels like a luxury on a panel. So we're going to get through and really want to dive into the work that we're doing. But first, I'd like to introduce everybody. Forgive me for having it written down and having to go a little old school. But immediately to my left is Antoinette Gomez. She's the founder and CEO of Pleasure, Peaks, and Peak Farm Labs, the leading U.S. and Canadian brand for improving women's sexual health. Pretty big fan of that. She's also a part-time cannabis consultant at Green Rush Program and a proud public speaker on cannabis and its cross-section with sexuality, women, and minority issues. Her educational background in holistic nutrition led her to discover alternative therapies for a broad set of ailments, including endometriosis, PCOS, and low sex drive. Welcome. We're excited to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Directly next to her is Dr. Kat Meyer. She is a licensed psychotherapist specializing in sex, trauma, and psychedelics. Okay, we're all here for that. Not only that, but she's a ceremonialist, author, teacher of yoga, and international speaker dedicated to evolving the relationship we have surrounding sexuality and our bodies. Her company, SexLoveYoga, SexLoveYoga, she leads online workshops, sensual retreats, and ketamine-assisted retreats for couples. She's also the host of Psychedelics podcast, so she's busy, she's doing things, she's getting stuff done, and we're here for that. Stariel has hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of views across her Instagram and TikTok. She's best known for her ability to take abstract emotional concepts and break them down into tangible step-by-step processes. Her clients include thought leaders, Fortune 500 executives, and highly successful entrepreneurs. Stariel guides them in cultivating their inner game, EQ mindfulness, self-awareness, and other crucial skills needed to optimize emotional and relational health and wellness. I feel like that's an important thing that you're doing, and we're really excited that you're here with us. Tommaso Barba is a PhD research scientist at the Center for Psychedelic Research, and the man on the panel. I'm here for that. Imperial College London. I know, he's like, look at this, luckiest man in this building at this point, if I do say so myself. Tommaso's research is focused on understanding the potential of psychedelic drugs for well-being and human flourishing, the brain effects of short-acting psychedelics like 5-MeO-DMT, and the potential role of psychedelic drugs for couples therapy and sexual well-being. He authored the first research study investigating the long-term effects of psychedelics and sexual functioning. Amazing. And then directly next, sorry, this is a litany. There's a lot going on here. But we have Sarah Tilley. Sarah Tilley is a psychedelic guide and founder of Beautiful Space. Focusing on psychedelic-assisted couples therapy, Sarah helps couples and individuals around the world reclaim intimacy and move through the next phase of their relationships. An educator for 30 years, a clinical therapist for 20, and working with plant medicine in altered states for hundreds of journeys, she's a trusted and popular voice in the media on the topics of sex and relationships, psychedelic mindfulness, and safe psychedelics. Amazing. Very excited. And Floor. Here we go. This is last and not least, and then we can get into it, I promise. Pioneer, entrepreneur, and medicine woman. No big deal. Named the corporate shaman by Forbes magazine, Floor is regarded as one of the trailblazers in the plant medicine world. With over a decade of experience pioneering her empathic, feminine approach to serving and integrating psychoactive medicines, her methods have been adopted by the leaders in the space and have made Floor one of the most respected psycho-spiritual entrepreneurs in the world. Floor is the founder and CEO of Nana Health, the world's first integrative solution for mental health and wellness. She's also the co-founder and chief creative officer of Rewire Therapeutics, a biotechnology company that provides the first-time release combination drugs products in the psychedelic industry. Okay, I'm gonna take a breath while you guys clap for these people. Okay, wonderful. So we have a whole flow of conversation that we want to do here, but much like sex itself, it's going to go where it's going to go. So we're going to start with something that I know that's really close to Kat's heart here, and we want to talk about safety when we're talking about melding two very spiritual experiences in one. Can you talk to us about acknowledging safety, the need for safety in this space? How do we navigate that? What does it look like? What can we look for as normal human beings in this space? How do we do this? What does this look like?
Yeah, so sex and psychedelics is super titillating, I get it, and we have to hold the reverence of this because these are two very powerful, potent experiences that can both enhance us but can also do us harm. So I oftentimes refer to the metaphor of like a sharp knife. You know, it can cut through the bullshit, but it can also cut us if we're not careful. So to be very consciously aware that psychedelics are not for everyone, we do need to understand our family history. We need to understand what psychotropic medications we're on. Are these medications 5-MeO inhibitors, SSRIs? These do not mix with many psychedelics, so we want to be careful. We want to do this prep work and do our to be able to take care of ourselves. We also need to be mindful of testing our substances. There are so many substances that are coming out with fentanyl, and if we're skipping that process and just jumping in to do the thing, then we can cause harm without even intending to. Also with psychedelics, the concept of consent is really, really important. And it's important to have this conversation ahead of time. It's important for us to have awareness of our own boundaries as well as our own desires and to be able to communicate that with both whoever we're engaging in the process. Because once we're in the space of psychedelics, the threshold of what we can tolerate emotionally and what we can tolerate physically increases. And so if we haven't set that already, then we may say yes to things in an altered state of consciousness that we would not have said if we were in a sober state. And I have had so many people then have to come in to work with me to undo some of the trauma that ended up happening. They did something, they overrid themselves. I've seen this, I've had clients in more open sexual dynamic or swinger dynamic who would take MDMA to override their boundaries in order to be sexually expressive and positive, and that wasn't true for them. So then we had to undo that, the pain and the emotion that caused. Further, we need to understand the set and setting. So we've talked about set and setting being the environment and being close and safe and reduce the noise or create something really yummy and delicious and a great playlist. But we also have to consider who we're engaging with. Do we have enough evidence and experience with this person or the people to know that these are people that we can trust? Can we trust that they're going to respect our boundaries? Can we trust that they're going to be present with us? Can we trust that they are not saying that this isn't for a date, but it actually is? They really just want to date us. So keeping this in mind, as well as are we vetting our practitioners, vetting our shamans, vetting our therapists, our coaches, like having a conversation with them, tuning into how our body responds when we talk to them, and also knowing what their lineage is and their background is, and do they have experience with sexual trauma or whatever it is that we're wanting to experience here. So not bypassing this very important process of prep and harm reduction, but this is what allows us to feel safe so that we can unravel into the most juicy orgasmic experience that we can't if we're guarding ourselves or if we're worried about the substances or the people and falling in love with them sooner than what we're ready for.
I think that's such an important conversation. What are some kind of practical things that, again, us wanting to engage in this can do? Because a lot of things you mentioned, vetting our practitioners, all those types of things. Is there top 3 things that you would recommend for those of us looking to engage in this that would ensure that kind of safety, that would ensure that kind of comfort so that we could experience this mystical orgasm?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that trust with anybody that you are experiencing with. Like, you can have the best sex of your life with yourself, and we'll get into that here with psychedelics and really feel that. Yeah. However, if you're going to engage with anybody else, it's probably not going to be a good idea if it's like your second date and you're taking MDMA. So maybe take some time to build that trust with somebody before you go into that altered state and build that bond with them. And then also always test your substances, please, please, please. And I would say check in with your own medications in your family history, because we are having individuals experience psychosis or having serotonin syndrome, and all of this can be reduced if we're taking that time to care.
That's perfect. Everyone here is doing some really great research, and so I'd like to dive in a little bit. Tommaso, you were doing studies about how sex changes for people who are being treated with psychedelics for depression, right? It's not necessarily for sex and what they're doing to break through those things. I'd love for you to comment and explore that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting to be in this panel and hear these conversations, because really makes me understand how Western science is still behind on looking at anything that is related in the intersection between sex and psychedelics. And what we did, and what my paper that is now under review and hopefully is going to be out in a few months. I have been saying that for a while, but hopefully it's going to come out. It's basically we collected data from people that underwent our trial of psilocybin for depression, where we compare people taking SSRIs plus psychotherapy and psilocybin plus psychotherapy. And we found, as a general results for people that do not know, that both drugs reduce depressive symptoms in a kind of comparable way, but psilocybin was way superior in improving overall well-being and positive symptoms in people. And so, given that it did that, we also wanted to see how the sex life of people was changing after that, because if you don't know, SSRIs are a problem for sex for people that are experiencing depression, because due to their effects on the serotonin system, they tend to suppress sexual functioning, and people tend to not be able to have arousal anymore, to have orgasms anymore, and this is a big problem, because then you need to kind of make a decision between having your relationship life together or having a depressive disorder that still doesn't hold your life together. So it's a big issue. But yeah, so when we did that, we look at how the sex life of people was changing 6 weeks down into the treatment, and we found that psilocybin was improving sexual pleasure, the ability of communicate well with the partner, and the sexual satisfaction with the partner, and also to see sex as a spiritual experience. While people treated with escitalopram, they tended to report negative changes. So we found a decrease in arousal, a decrease in sexual interest, and so on. And the change was pretty big. Between the two treatments, it was kind of apparent how one differed to the other. And this was the main finding that is more clinical rather than maybe generalizable to the general population. And at the same time, we also looked at how the sex life of people was changing after naturalistic psychedelic use. So we have a lot of data looking about a lot of different things coming from psychedelic ceremonies, from people taking psychedelics in recreational setting or personal settings. And we wanted to see 4 weeks after how the sex life of people was changing. And we found very similar results to the ones found in the clinical population, so that people tended to report more pleasures during sex, better communication with the partner, more sexual satisfaction, and so on. And this is coming from uncontrolled settings, but it's kind of a complementary finding that could be put together. And I think that for now we can say that overall psychedelics might have positive post-acute effects on sexual well-being and probably romantic intimacy too. And this is what I'm trying to expand in my research, and I'm happy to chat about this maybe in a later question.
I was going to say, or you could send me an email, because so I can read it over and over again. No, that's wonderful. I was there's a lot. I would love to chat more. Flor, your work is focused on the sacred nature of sex, the sacred nature of psychedelics, and that real intersection. I'd love for you to explain your work, what you're finding, what you're encouraged by, and how we can implement that in our own sexual lives and in our sacred lives.
Yeah, sure. So my journey started with ayahuasca, and ayahuasca started showing me my path, that it was to serve 5-MeO in a way that I would like to be served. And simultaneously, I was training in Tantra. And so kind of my journey made me kind of passionate about ancestral way of healing. And I started finding these correlations and parallels that I will get to the same space of satori, of temporary enlightenment, using sexuality as using 5-MeO DMT. And when I started serving 5-MeO in over thousands of cases, I started to notice that people were having full body orgasms. They were accessing their sexual force. And if they had, let's say, a trauma, this trauma may come to consciousness in the process, but if they did not, they would have full body orgasms. And in this way, I mean like both women and men without the need of touch. And also like some women would squirt, right? Like the different form of how a woman can have a healing orgasm that come from the womb. And so in smaller doses, we started to see that there was all this sexual energy that we don't tend to know how to let go, that a clitoris orgasm doesn't really create that release, that 5-MeO was becoming this tool. And so I think that understanding that through sexuality we can get through temporary state of enlightenment that is not so much to be kinky in the head, in creating fantasies, there's nothing wrong with that, but that ancestrally it was a way to connect with the divine, to go into this expanded state of consciousness where you can, you know, in tantric practice, you can make love for long hours, where you start getting high on your own supplies, on your level of endorphin, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine start raising in blood, and suddenly the face of the other person start changing in shapes and become like an angel, and you're like having visions, and you have kind of energies moving your body. There is not much mind really, you know, driving the intercourse. And so then first, I think it's just so worth to learn, and this is part of what we are bringing forth in Nana, is understanding that sexuality should be as a field of medicine, right? This is our light force, and we have the resources in-house that through the arousal to get high on our own supply, our own antidepressant, our own painkiller, right? We don't need to take this externally, and actually they are way more effective because they are endocrinous. And on the other hand, psychedelics can help us get out of our mind so we can fully commune and get into this space of no interference, where the ego gets out of the way and we can fully surrender and have the kind of release and surrender that sex is meant, you know, to connect with oneself and higher.
Sarah, that's part of your work, working with couples to use psychedelics to come over those hurdles, to increase their connection, to increase their life, to access that life force that Flora's talking about. If you'd like to explain a little bit more about your work and what you've experienced and learned.
Thank you. Yes, I work with couples and individuals. I created a program which is 3 months long, according to MAPS protocol. I use psilocybin in particular because it helps couples move away from entanglement and come into a place of individuation. I use that because it's legal, because it's easier for myself to be able to understand what's in the medicine. I work in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And the process that I take couples through is really onboarding, preparation, medicine day, and integration. In that period of 3 months, couples come to me at the very beginning. They're at a fork in the road. They know that there's more intimacy to be had. They know that there is something within themselves at the stage of life that they're at that needs to be woken up. And that's a very kind of very broad term, woken up. That's, in connection with us here in Wonderland. But for many, the couples that I work with are facing separation and divorce. And they have houses to divide, children to tell, and there's a whole new life, which neither of them particularly want to go down. So we're looking at using psilocybin in particular to take them through the process of understanding their childhood story, their family of origin, and their trauma. And that's all in the preparation. We have onboarding, which is in the forms of collecting data, which is medical history and psychiatric history. All of our work is very helpfully comes from Imperial College. And then in preparation, we look at, in preparation 1, there's 2 preparations. In preparation 1, we look at what each of the individual is bringing to the relationship. Prior to that, there's been a case taking for each of the individuals. So myself as the therapist is highly aware of the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual picture of each individual. Many of these stories have never been told. Some of them were told on date 2 and then put aside. Some of the people all of the people who I work with in couples, they're at a point of change. So readdressing these issues of family of origin, childhood story, and trauma is really helpful for them to be able to have these very deep and meaningful conversations under the guidance of a therapist. There's a psychological support program that goes all the way through the 3-month program. Preparation 2, we're looking at what is their future story. How do they want and choose to live once they have this psilocybin intervention? And then the medicine day brings this sacred ceremony and ritual into, generally speaking, I'm working with people from the modern Western world. We have this deep sense that from the East, I'm bringing my own story in here and my own connection with Eastern philosophy is how do we bring Tantra? How do we bring the language of Tantra and sacred sexuality into a struggling relationship? So we do that in the medicine day. Each of them become unentangled from each other within their own journey, their own sacred journey. We're talking about reciprocity. We're talking about this new form of language, which is to do with traditional medicine. It's to do with something which us in the West haven't really inherited other than generational trauma. So we're looking at absolutely working and breaking the lineage of generational trauma. And then we come through to integration stages, which is, there's 4 integration here, and each one of these has a progressive direction in bringing steps into bringing the lessons that they took away from all of this work and how to integrate it into their everyday life.
That's incredible. That's really great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Sariel, you are working with a number of different people and talking about how psychedelics can act as a catalyst to kind of break through those hurdles, break through those challenges that we have. Can you talk a little bit about what you're learning and experiencing and hearing from the people you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I primarily work with intimacy, helping people to experience the types of relationships and intimacy that they want to have. And I use a variety of different catalysts. And for me, it's really important to consider psychedelics as part of a larger ecosystem of catalysts such as breath work, meditation, tools for self-awareness, facilitated therapeutic modalities. And as Kat was talking about around making sure that you're ready, this is the right fit, making sure that you've built trust, I think it's really important to consider different ways to connect more deeply and build intimacy before getting to the psychedelic place. So having challenging, uncomfortable conversations, sharing vulnerably, sharing about your history, what are the things that you've learned about yourself, what are the things that you struggle with intimacy, sharing that, bearing our souls in that way can not only open up a lot more intimacy, but also demonstrate for us, is this person that we're talking to really willing and able and ready to receive us in the way that we want to be loved? And once you do have that framework, that groundwork laid, then bringing in psychedelics can be such an incredible way to develop even deeper levels of self-awareness, to share even more, to move, as Sarah was saying, from entanglement into individuation, and then how do we move from individuation into interdependence? Once we're both sovereign beings, how can we utilize this journey that we go on with the medicine to actually lean on each other in beautiful ways so that 1 + 1 can equal 3, so that we can enter an energetically generative relationship where we're not asking one person to fulfill something for the other, but we can actually support each other in being much, much more than the sum of the individual parts.
Wow, that's fascinating. And Kat, how can psychedelics redefine sex for us? What is this all about that you're talking about?
Yeah, we can learn a lot from psychedelics around sex. I think in this culture, we've been taught that sex is heteronormative. It's mainly penetration focused, penis in the pussy, and it's goal oriented. We're driving towards an orgasm. It's like friction. It's bodies. We're focused on the other person. But that also perpetuates a lot of our dysfunction. So we experience increased, erection issues, or we have shame because we can't experience a genital orgasm. We get fixated on performance, like performing for the other person, getting the other person off. And all of this disconnects us from the body and really like the depth of pleasure that we can experience. So psychedelics anchor us into the reality that like what Flora and Sarah were saying, sex can be energetic, it can be tantric, it can be bodies in pleasure versus chasing after the orgasm. What if the goal was the pleasure as a compass that we follow rather than the orgasm that we chase after? Psychedelics also teach us this interconnectedness, this ability to dissolve the boundaries between us and our bodies and the other person or that around us, and realize that we're so connected to all of this. It can also teach us that we are the sole source of our own turn on, but we keep outsourcing it to some hot dude or some cute chick to be the person that turns us on, or make our partner be that for us. But this teaches us like, oh, if I just breathe, if I just move my body a little bit, if I make some sounds, oh my God, everything is orgasmic and it just feels really good. And you realize that orgasm can be this whole body, like Flora was saying, energetic experience, and it's not necessarily about my genitals. There's so many people who share that their MDMA experience, they're not even focused on the fact that they can't keep it hard. It's not about that. They're having the best time being in their body and just rolling around and this intimate experience. So I think that we can reduce some of the dysfunction and the shame that we have around sex when it helps us to redefine that word, sex. It's way more than what we've been taught in this culture. And what I've learned, through psychedelics and even Tantra, my background is in Tantra and BDSM. And that was when I first realized that sex could be something so much more. Yeah.
Antoinette, I know that you have stories about this, that you've had people that you've worked with, people that you know that are talking about these exact same things. I'd love to hear some of the stories that you have from your experience as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And something I just want to add quickly is like we're not just a women's sexual health company. We are a sexual health company. And I started this back in 2015, and I quickly learned there's a lot more than women using our products. There's non-binary people using our products. There's trans people using our products. We actually took out all of the gender in all of our education. So I think that's really important when we're talking about sex. And when it comes to stories, I love being at the forefront of creating new drugs for sexual health ailments. And, you know, we're known for our vaginal cannabis suppositories for endometriosis. They're available across Canada. And ever since we've been available through pharmacy, I'm so eager to hear how people are using these products. You know, I've heard men using our products for hemorrhoids and prostate health to PCOS and fibroids as well, and specifically cancer patients too. But what I thought was super cool that I wanted to bring up for this conference is that I work with Carlin Costa. And Carlin Costa is a clinical sexologist, and she uses ketamine as a psychedelic therapy. And she loves our cannabis suppositories, and she's actually using them in conjunction together. I think that's the exciting part about being in Canada is that we have access to these drugs, and she works with a lot of people who have sexual trauma and she uses somatic healing. So I like that we can use both of our products, and I just love being at the forefront of these research and hearing how different medical professionals are using it. Mm-hmm.
Well, which leads me to my first question, and this is for the panel. What are some practical steps that individuals and partners can take to begin this journey, keeping in mind the safety, keeping in mind the sacredness of it? It feels a little overwhelming, not in a bad way, but like okay, cool, I have psychedelics and I have a partner, I have myself. Now what? Right? So where do we start in order to begin this journey? And that's open to all of you, for sure. Oh, here we go.
What I would say to set the tone, that sex stands for sexual energy exchange, right? And that something I heard from my teachers was that the addiction of coming is something that we never really even been confronted with. And that the only way to maximize pleasure is to delay it, right? So if we understand that it's a matter maybe of changing the rules with new principles of how to engage, and understand that every time that we are peaking our sexual energy in contracted pleasure, we are actually depleting ourselves of our life force. That is something that actually instead, the more that we raise the wave without crossing the threshold, and it's kind of surfing this wave, and we are getting high in our own drags, and at the same time we are delaying the pleasure. It's just, you know, proposing a different way of how this play can go, and it's something that then you can use that energy that you harness for everything you do in life, right? And so I would just, you know, pass it on, but I think that is like a good place where to start.
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, it's absolutely a privilege to be part of a couple's journey that have arrived in my office and they haven't had sex for 7 years. They don't sleep in the same bed. They have had 4 children, and they have sex 3 times a year, and that's for 11 minutes each time in missionary position. And the first exercise I will do with them after I've taken their case, so they have my attention, I've built rapport with them, they understand that I understand them, and then I take them through to the next couple session. And the first exercise I will do, I will get them to reposition themselves on the sofa. And couples will willingly go into this exercise because they're being guided by someone that they trust. And they've heard what outcomes are possible through the course of this 3-month program. So I'll get them to reposition themselves on the sofa, facing each other, legs crossed, knees touching, so that they can actually hold hands, and I will get them to eye gaze. This is the first intimacy that they will have experienced in their life. This is the moment in the 4th trimester when they're staring in their mother's eyes, and they will feel safe, they will feel content, they will be surrendered in a way that they can be touched and not feel this guarding coming up. And then I will get them to breathe together, and they will follow my instruction very easily. And then I will get them to notice what is happening in their own bodies. So I start to build what I call the language of sensation. And very often a couple or an individual, and I run a women's course as well, because I want women to be able to know how to express what is they're feeling in their body so they can tell their partner. So I'll get them to identify what they're feeling and to be able to express this in this very moment, in this first exercise that they've ever done. And they will come away, we'll finish that exercise. It might last for anywhere between 3 minutes and 10 minutes. And from there, this is this crucial bonding exercise, which then I will put into a daily practice for them, because they're new in the program, they want to do it, they want to get it right. And then they come to preparation 2, and they are sitting on the sofa together. They might have had sex. They are looking at each other where they may have been facing away from each other. The body language has completely changed. And that's even before they have had their psychedelic medicine.
Wow, that's really powerful that we haven't even gotten to the
It's so
psychedelics part of it. Yeah, that's fantastic. Kat, what is currently available for psychedelic therapy and sex?
Yeah, so I am licensed in California, and ketamine is what's legal in the United States. Psilocybin is decriminalized in many states, but it's legal in Oregon and Colorado. And then MDMA, which I'm also trained in, is just around the corner. So we're hoping for 2024, as long as everything goes smoothly. And but so in my clinical practice, I use ketamine-assisted therapy, and it's been an incredible way to help. I like to say that it's a dissociator from dissociation, meaning that it lifts the heaviness of depression or anxiety to be able to help an individual to connect with, whether it's their body and their own pleasure is something that they've been disconnected with for a really long time, or to be able to connect with the clarity of some of the blocks that might be getting in the way of their sexual experience. I've even had clients, I'm working with sexual trauma in the space, and they're able to meet their perpetrator in that mind space to find the resolution. Or I bring in a lot of somatic practices and instruments to help to move the energy in the body, and they'll break into a full-blown energetic orgasm in my office space. So I think it's interesting how many people can think of ketamine and not think that it's very sexual, but I see that it's an incredible tool at lower doses to be able to help people to better connect with their bodies and to be able to allow the body to relax and open for the energetic experience to come in, helping them to redefine what they understand sex to be.
That's wonderful. Tommaso, I know that the work that you've discovered, it was kind of tangential to the depression studies you're doing. What would you love to explore, given what you've already explored with psychedelics and sex?
Yeah. So there are maybe like 3 main things where I'm trying to direct my work. The first one is through a collaboration with Sarah and Beautiful Space. Because, we met at a conference like maybe a bit more than a year ago, and she's working with couples, and she has this program where she basically undergoes psilocybin-assisted couples therapy with distressed couples. And given that we are not allowed to like test this in control settings yet, I was like, okay, like you're already doing this work, so why won't you let me and my team collect data on your couples and see, okay, like let's see how they are at the start of the program, or we are at the end of it, 3 months after, and what happens in the middle. So we are starting this collaboration in which we will have 20 couples that will go through her program, and we aim at developing this first observational study of psilocybin with psychological support for relationship distress, and hopefully using this as a first pillar to move it over into more control settings. And the second project is about like using big data to try to understand how all these compounds that we have been talking are contributing to developing relationship satisfaction and also like maybe challenging experiences, because even with MDMA, that I think has been the most well-known love drugs, if we can call it in this way, but if we look at like the scientific research that has been done on this, there is not a single study of MDMA for like couples therapy, on the impact of MDMA on relationship satisfaction. There is just one small study in modern research that was done with patients with PTSD, so a way more complex population, but we are moving through it. But even from naturalistic use, like we don't know if people that are taking MDMA together and months after, is their relationship better? Is it become too much? Is the intimacy become too strong? And all of that. And the same is for psilocybin and ketamine. So like the idea is using big data to look at like what happens to partners that are planning to take psychedelics together in whichever setting. It could be like with a facilitator, it could be together in their house, or it could be at a party, and then trying to like look on how all these different variables are impacting relationship satisfaction, sexual satisfaction later on, and using all these grounds to move this into a control setting. And the third aim, that I will bring it quicker maybe, but is using neuroscience to build further evidence on how these drugs can work to facilitate intimacy, because many of you might not know, but there is a new developing field of social neuroscience in which simultaneous recording of brain activity is used. So people are put like electroencephalography with electrodes on two different people that are interacting with each other, and then brain synchrony through this is measured. That is basically how the brain waves of people are synchronizing or not when they interact. And the theory is basically that the more synchronized these brain waves are, the more people are connected between each other. And there is already research that has been done without psychedelics that has been shown that this interbrain synchrony is way higher in romantic partners compared to strangers where it's not even present, and friends are more or less in the middle. And then the idea is, how can we use this tool in neuroscience to apply it to psychedelics? And I would love later on to do a study in which maybe like the brain synchrony is measured before doing psychedelics together, and then after, and see if it improves, and seeing if like acute brain synchrony, maybe under MDMA or under psilocybin, it can be used as a neural marker of social connectedness and intimacy. So this is more down the line, but I hope we're going to move through it in the future.
I think all those goals are great, so I encourage you to do those things. Stariel, what are some tools that we can pick up and start to use in our daily lives as we continue to be sexual beings? Is there something that you would hope that we could use, hope that we could engage with today, maybe tonight, whatever that looks like?
Absolutely. We all love instant gratification, right? The number one thing that I find to be the most helpful when it comes to people wanting to have healthier, happier sex lives, more fulfilling relationships, and more easeful, playful, healing, conducive psychedelic journeys. It's actually all the same thing. And it's learning how to recognize your emotions as physical sensations in the body. This is the most effective way that I know to bring what's going on in your unconscious into your conscious awareness, so that you then have agency around it, around creating the life that you want, the relationship that you want, the sexual experience that you want, etc. It also brings you into your body. So as many people up here have said, the more you're in your body, the more sensation you can feel. It can also really help with uncomfortable conversations between couples. So if we have patterns, perhaps, of behaviors that we do, such as maybe having trouble expressing my desire. I have trouble expressing my desire. Maybe I feel afraid that it's not going to be received well. Maybe I'm actually so afraid or feel so unsafe to share my desires that I don't feel them consciously anymore. And I have a tendency to go along with what my partner or my friends or other people want to do. And then eventually I start to feel resentment or frustration. The best thing to do is to pay attention to when you feel tension in your body. And when you feel a physical tension in your body, you know that there's something else going on. So depending on whether you're looking at this more spiritually, more emotionally, more physiologically, there's a physical tension, right? That can be stuck emotional energy. That can be a signal from your body. I call it the check engine light. All right, I'm feeling this tension. The check engine light is coming on. What's happening here? And there's so much power in just slowing down and paying attention to what's going on, checking in, getting curious, going into a meditative state. Maybe it's 5 seconds, maybe it's a few minutes, maybe it's removing yourself from a situation, taking a little bit of space in your own energy to figure out, okay, what is it that I really want or need here? How do I know what the right pace is for my body? How do I know if I'm overriding? And tuning into those physical sensations is an incredibly powerful way to do that. So you can do that right now, just noticing, okay, what's going on in my body? Do I feel tension anywhere? And if you want to cultivate this skill with more refinement, I highly recommend starting with a daily body scan meditation. If anybody hasn't done that before, it's really straightforward. Sitting down, taking some deep breaths, closing your eyes, bringing yourself into a meditative state, and then starting. Some people like to start at the top of the head, some people like to start at the toes, and moving all the way up or all the way down your body, just taking note of the physical sensations that you feel so that you have a baseline of, okay, this is how I feel today. And then you can check in throughout the day. How does your body feel if someone cuts you off in traffic? How does your body feel if you get a note or a text message from a new crush? How does your body feel when you're in the bedroom and something's going on? Maybe you're desiring something. Maybe you're actually not wanting what's happening to happen. And how can you then slow down in that moment, notice the check engine light, tune in with yourself, feel your body more deeply, and be able to share that with your partner to be able to develop deeper intimacy.
That's wonderful. That's so helpful. I want to save some time for Q&A from the audience, but I want to hear from you, Antoinette. I know we talked earlier about stories, and I want to hear like your best story ever about the work that you're doing, about the people you're talking with. I think we'll start with that, and then we'll take some questions from everybody sitting here.
Yeah, most definitely. And I love giving you guys tips, to take home. I think one of the best places to explore, and I apologize that I'm mostly in cannabis than psychedelics, but I find that playing around with cannabis lubricants are so fun. And I work with a lot of patients, and I find that the biggest question around patients is like they're really scared about being high. So I find that cannabis topicals are a great way to not have those experiences. So if you're using like a cannabis topically vaginally, there's such a high mucosa area that a little cannabis goes such a long way. I find that it really heightens orgasms completely, which goes into my really fun story. So I've been doing this for a long time, and this was before I had a pharmaceutical company. This is when I was like, we should just do it. We should, right? Because there were so many people noticing that cannabis was really helpful for their sexual experiences. I had a lot of sexual trauma patients and endometriosis patients. So this specific demographic has a lot of pain during intercourse. So it was a no-brainer to find something that was safer for the vagina so they can have these sexual experiences. And when I was going through the formulations by myself with one doctor, I got to try cannabis lubes for the first time. We use this extra ingredient that's really common in pharmaceuticals that make it go a little bit deeper. And this is when I had my own psychedelic experience while meeting my pussy. I felt like I got to see my uterus, but my pussy got so high I had to sit down when I was having sex. I had to take a moment because I just found that it was way too high of a dosage, first of all, but it was such an incredible experience to connect with my womb. I thought that was very sacred. And I think that these plants are very sacred, psychedelics and cannabis, and I'm so eager to get into psychedelic research. So when it comes to topicals, they're incredible. And, a little goes a long way, so I wouldn't go for the high dosage ones, but we eventually got to suppositories where are way longer lasting and way more helpful for patients. So that's where I've really focused on. But, I hear so many incredible stories from people just not knowing what suppositories are and finding odd holes in their body to put them in, as you can imagine. I love the imagination. But I think for me, I just love that I get to help patients, and I get emails every day saying that this has saved my marriage, that this has saved my life, not having pain anymore after trying everything in the pharmaceutical space, and finding true intimacy. I used to be a tantric sex coach which is hilarious if you want to see that Vice interview that I did a million years ago. But I really love hearing from patients of what they're experiencing, and I'm really dedicated at creating drugs that will help humanity. I think that's really important. And yeah, I think that another cool story that I want to share is that I have a huge demographic of trans people using our suppositories, and myself being a part of the alphabet mafia, I was like, obviously it's gay men using it for anal sex because that would be a lot more easier. But it actually ended up being trans people for using them post-surgeries. So I love having these conversations because sex is so much more than what we're taught in school, and it's important that people have pleasurable experiences. What I always say is that if you don't have a healthy sex life, you don't have a healthy life. It's an incredible, important part of your overall health, and it needs to be taken seriously, and we should be able to talk about it freely as well. So that's why I love everything that we do at Peak Farm Labs. We get to rewrite what clinical trials look like. We have to include different races because they react differently, different genders in terms of sexual health. And when you look at the traditional lubricants on the market, like your KY and your Trojans on the market, a lot of them have really harmful chemicals. So I find that we really need to do better in terms of drug development, product development, and that's what I love about Peak Farm Labs.
And so where are you handing this stuff out after? Like, where do we get our hands on this?
So in the US, I'm under Pleasure Peaks. That was my first cannabis brand. It's been available since 2015. So if you're in the US, you can access them. And if you're in Canada, we're under the name Peak Farm Labs, which is available through pharmacy.
Amazing. I'd like to hear from the audience, questions, thoughts. You have these incredible people at your disposal. Please throw your hand up or not. Really, no questions. Nothing.
We left everyone speechless.
I know,
guess.
look at that. They're still processing. I know, take your breath away kind of vibes. Oh, I see one.
I know, everybody has questions, they're just not asking them. It's sex. So I personally read a book called Taoist Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy. There's one for female as well, by Mantak Chow or something like that. And it talks about how to practice semen retention, and instead of orgasming and releasing, but then instead sending it up the base of the spine and recycling it, right? And so I've been practicing that, and I have yet to maybe once or twice practice with another partner. And so I just was curious if any of you have understanding of that, and with yourself and partners, and also the specific question around of depletion of energy when you externally orgasm, or ejaculate, whereas through this recycling of energy, do we have any studies or research or understanding of what happens to the energy? Do we maintain that energy when we're doing it ourselves? Do we heighten our energy? Do we, just expanding on all that stuff.
I can take on that one. So you're referring to the work of Magdan Chia, which is Thai. And yes, there is no scientific studies when it comes to these, but like in the tantric tradition, they refer to ojas as the level of sexual energy or sperm that a man holds within. And this is something that it doesn't regenerate. So that's why you want to preserve it. It takes 21 days for you to fully charge your body of sexual energy. And they say that once you do that, you are sexual active, but you are not ejaculating, then you can start practicing Tantra. So then, kind of the need of friction is because we are the sensitives, right? We don't really feel, but after 21 days of not ejaculating, the moment that you slide in, the intensity of the experience really gets amplified. And so as you start getting, sexual active and you cross this 21-day barrier, you would notice that eventually when you are stopping before the point of no return, let's say that you are getting to 98%, if 100 would be when you cross the threshold, going down to 80% and repeating that process of getting back to 95, 98 and just playing within that, then is when you eventually get to what they call the valley orgasm, right? And so then you can be orgasming for like 20 minutes and hours of like in a full body orgasm where your whole body start like going into contractions, right? And so it's a matter of what they say. It's like you only ejaculate when you want to have a child or when you want to actually consciously practice sexual magic and imprint that orgasm into form with your intention. But otherwise, you keep that sexual force inside. And it's very different for a woman to be loved by a man that has been holding his sexual energy than for a man that is completely depleted and has to go into friction because otherwise he doesn't feel much. If that makes sense. I think that was the first question, and there was a second question to that.
I'll add to it. So the Taoist practices and the tantric practices actually, scientifically, it's a lot about your nervous system health. So there's a lot of use of breath work and movement of your body and what we call bandhas, or these locks throughout your body. And all of this is having to do with how healthy is your nervous system. Like energy is nervous system. So if you have a poor sympathetic system from overstimulation or numbing yourself out in front of the TV all day, or recognizing where you're leaking your energy and other activities throughout your day, you can learn how to, you'll learn that through these practices you can strengthen that ability. So Mantak Chia, his practices of microcosmic orbit is simply moving the energy. It's using the breath. It's relaxing the body. It's using visualization to help with increasing the sympathetic system. You need the sympathetic system as well as the parasympathetic. I'm sorry, I'm off 30-hour flight from Tanzania, so we're twisting this all around. But the sympathetic system you need to be able to ejaculate. The parasympathetic system is what you need for. Sorry, I switched that around. Sympathetic system is important for arousal, and parasympathetic system is important for ejaculation. So you need the health of both of those in order to experience, these higher states of orgasmic experience and full body orgasms.
And I thought of something that you guys can all do when you go home today, because there is tons of samples, psychedelic samples, and I think one of my best ways that I love to do intimacy practices with couples is partner yoga. Very basic, nothing intermediate or advanced, but very basic partner yoga is a great way to really increase, that as well.
We have time for one more question. Oh, look at all these people now. I'm going to go with this lady in the middle here. And then, you guys cool to stick around if these going to... Okay, cool. Go ahead.
I was wondering if you guys could all give a recommendation of the number one book that you would say to read to cultivate a spiritual, sexual, relationship with your partner. So when you do have sex, it's a spiritual encounter rather than, just having sex, like having intercourse.
Margot and Nand?
I would say, I think David Data wrote a book for the man and a book for the woman. For the woman, it's called Dear Lover, and David Data is the biggest integrative teacher in the world. And for the man is The Way of the Superior Man. I think that is a good foundation to start, and if you resonate with him, he has many more books in that line that speak to both with practical application and at the same time, understanding sexuality as a spiritual practice that you can do with your partner as your own personal evolution.
I would also highly recommend Urban Tantra if you want a book that is very accessible and has a number of really practical exercises in it around connecting with yourself and also connecting with a partner and connecting both of your hearts together. It's called Urban Tantra. Barbara, you guys remember? Last name, Cancenelis, something like that.
And I was going to say that book as well, so I definitely second that.
Mine's going to be a little bit different. So I would recommend, so this one's the fusion of Tantra and BDSM. to really showing you how sex can be psychedelic, even without a psychedelic. So this book is called Radical Ecstasy. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
By the way, David Data has Blue Truth. That I also, it would be for both if you want to read one. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And if you want to learn just more about cannabis and sexual health, I have a podcast called the Pleasure Talks Podcast, where I interview tons of researchers, patients, people from all different walks of life, all about sexual health. So I think that's a great resource as well.
Literally just adding them into my Goodreads. Not even joking. Well, thank you guys so much for your time, the energy, the work that you're doing, for sharing this with us. I think this is such an important topic when we're all coming at it from different places and we're all looking to connect with ourselves and our partners. So if we could thank our panelists today and encourage them in the work that they're doing. I'm really excited. And that's a wrap for Wonderland 2023. On behalf of, yeah, I know, wild.
Thank you.
Wild.
Thank you.
On behalf of myself and our team, there are 6 of us that put this event on this year, and we are so thankful that you are willing to come, spend time with us, learn, engage with this amazing community, perpetuate the message that we're trying to get across, and really give us your time and your energy. We're so thankful. We're announcing Wonderland 2024 within the next few weeks. So you'll know right away that you can throw it on your calendar. We want you all back. Again, we as a team are taking next week off, mostly because I can't talk anymore. Nobody can, anybody else. But we would love to hear from you as well, hear about the great things, testimonials, all that kind of great stuff. Reach out to me and my team, but we won't respond next week. I'm going to tell you that straight up. My out of office is going on in about 5 minutes. So again, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next year, and thank you for making this such a success. Cheers. Have a good night.